I started it. Don't say a whole bunch of slurs yet, okay? Actually, it's YouTube. So, alright, it's going.
All right.
So, yeah, no saying a whole bunch of slurs. Although it's probably allowed on YouTube.
Wait. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. We'll keep it at PG-13 or something.
Alright, so, if I remember correctly, this thing started because, I said that, uh, Trump threatening to deport American citizens to, what's it called, CCOT, is a fascist statement. You said you don't agree with the deportation, but you don't think it constitutes the definition of fascism. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. So I think there's a difficulty here because when we're talking about like government types, like there's things you can point to and be like, okay, here's a checklist. This is what you need in order to be a democracy. This is what you need in order to be a monarchy. Like we can say, okay,
Yep.
if you have a king who's the head of state, you're probably a monarchy. But when it comes to fascism, that's more like a characteristic. Do you agree with that?
No, I mean fascism is a government form, basically the same way that monarchy is a form.
Um,
There's no other fascist characteristic, just like there's not a monarchist characteristic. Well, you could make that argument that there actually is. There's like monarchist actually people that believe in monarchy, right? You
um,
understand that too, right? There are people, or it's not popular anymore, but there used to be people who used to actually believe in the monarchy and would support it based on monarchist principles.
yeah, and some of them are still around. We call them Brits.
Yeah, but they also used to be the original right wing party, basically.
Yeah. I don't
And
know if
nationalism is left wing originally.
I don't know if I agree with
Obviously, things shift. Obviously, think no, it's absolutely left wing. Nationalism is absolutely a left wing ideology.
nationalism
It
is.
found, yeah, nationalism is originally a left wing ideology. It comes from left wing philosophers,
You're talking
and it
about
has
like
shifted. It has
Renaissance
it,
era.
in the like 18th, 19th century when nationalism originally arose, became a more popular idea. Nationalism stood against monarchism, with monarchism being on the right side and nationalism being on the left side. Because monarchists are all about international community. That's because all the monarchists are all related to each other, right? Like every king is a cousin or a nephew of somebody else in another, like all the Germans and stuff, they were all connected with each other. The current ruling monarchy of England is German in origin, and they were cousins of the dude that was in Russia. So these guys all had something in common.
Um,
That the
wasn't
monarchism was traditionally more right wing.
wasn't the idea of nationalism, doesn't that like didn't that actually come around like after the United States was formed? It was like uh what was it, World War I was when the idea of nationalism kind of came out.
No, nationalism was already way in the 19th century, bro. Like the whole war in Germany was in 1860, I think. That's when Germany united under the guise of nationalism. And Italy united, I think, in 1865 or 1870, also under the guise of nationalism. But the nationalist movement was existed already way earlier. Already, well, the nationalism movement basically really got popularity after the Napoleonic Wars, because Napoleon basically used it as a method to spread his message.
Sure. I think nationalism can be argued to be either left or right wing, but I don't think ultra nationalism.
No, 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 no. It is left wing. It is absolutely left wing originally. That now it has shifted over time in the last, let's say, last 7 decades or something. And it's gradually shifted from left wing politics to more right wing politics because nothing is ever static in life ever. things just keep changing, right?
Yeah.
Monarchists don't even exist anymore, basically. So they left the right wing field entirely, and left and the nationalism as an old concept basically started drifting towards the right wing ideology.
Well,
But it was originally left wing because it's about the people. Nationalism is about the people uniting under one banner to make everything better for the people, right? So it has its roots in socialism.
it's kind of like how
It's
like religiosity that used to be sort of a left wing thing, and then it kind of shifted towards a right wing thing. Like, I don't know if it would be accurate to say like these ideas are left or right wing so much as they get co opted by either the left or the right.
Yeah, exactly. But the whole concept of left and right, therefore, is more of a what group are am I part of right now? But things could have completely changed in 100 years, and the definition of left and right isn't a static thing. It's constantly changing.
Sure,
But
they're
if
used.
we're talking about if we're talking about where nationalism originally came from, it's absolutely coming from the left wing originally. It was about nationalism versus monarchism,
Sure.
and it has its roots in socialism, in the people uniting everybody that has a common cause, basically, or in most cases, the common culture, common ethnicity. They're uniting together to form one collective whole to protect everybody. It's a socialist idea, originally.
When you say
It,
socialist, you're referring to like pre-Marxian socialism, right?
just means socialist idea. But before communism, there was just also just socialism. Communism itself is another later invention.
Yeah. So there was what was referred to as liberal socialism, and then before that there was what would later be called utopian socialism.
You got like 100 different socialisms, bro.
Yeah. But
I don't know the specifics about every one of them. I just know that it's originally originates from like socialist ideas from uniting all the people together. It
um,
doesn't have any it doesn't have any origin in right wing because at that time when nationalism was invented, it basically opposed monarchism. There's places like Austria-Hungary where it's like a multi-ethnic state, right?
yeah.
So there was one monarch ruling over many multiple different peoples, and he would be in control over all those different peoples. And nationalism basically opposed that. They were opposed against kings and rulers above because they wouldn't be serving the people.
Sure. Uh,
Monarchists and nationalists were completely opposed to each other because you can't serve both the people and the king at the same time. A king that's an Austrian king that's ruling over Hungary wouldn't be able to service the Hungarian people properly because he's not Hungarian.
I want to go back to the idea that fascism is a government type. Usually, when people
It is a government type, sure, yeah.
what was that?
It is a government type, sure, yeah.
Sharia.
No, I mean it is a government type. Yeah, I agree.
Well, usually when people refer to the government of Germany, they usually refer to it as a dictatorship, while the ideology is usually referred to as fascism.
Yeah, the two are not mutually exclusive. You
Sure, but like,
get not every dictator is a fascist state, and not every fascist state. Well, yeah. Well, probably every fascist state is a dictatorship, honestly.
well, all it
But
requires is there to be one party. You could technically have a like a fascist oligarchy.
yeah, yeah, probably. But if the requirements that there's only one state or only one party, then you could argue that the Communist Party is also a fascist state.
Well, it's there's a bunch of qualifiers. So the thing with fascism is like there's not like a strict agreement as to towards what the definition is. Kind of like how every sociologist has a different definition of genocide. But
Sure.
there's certain characteristics that tend to show up in every definition. So like
Hmm.
one of them would be one party. One would be suppression of individual liberties. One would be suppression of like socialist or communist elements.
Mhm.
And for the record, when I say suppression of socialist communist elements, it doesn't mean that you can't be a socialist fascist state. I would just argue that in those places they also suppress other socialists and other communists.
Mhm.
So when we're
I
talking
think
about
it's
the
more about,
idea of something being fascistic, like you can say this is a
yeah,
fascist action without the state involved being necessarily fascist. So that's why.
sure, but usually you can address the same grievances you have with something, and you can, like, a lot of times people call something fascist when it's more about authoritarianism, right? Like it's an abuse of power, but not every abuse of power is inherently fascist.
Uh,
Because otherwise you're muddling the word. Because otherwise I can say, oh well, it's communist. Every time you have an abuse of power, it's communist because the Soviet Union was an authoritarian communist state, and so I'm equating authoritarianism with communism. And so every time somebody does something authoritarian, I'm going to say it's communist. It doesn't make sense because it doesn't really have anything to do with communism in itself. It's just an authoritarian action,
well, you can
right?
have like
So calling every authoritarian action fascist because you don't like the authoritarian action doesn't mean it's fascist.
well, authoritarianism is usually like the idea of like unifying into like a central power in the government, usually like under like one authority, like taking power away from the people generally, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, that's authoritarian.
So you could have technically have like an authoritarian. This sounds like an oxymoron, but like an authoritarian libertarian society. Like it's technically possible as long as you just have a central authority.
Violently, I guess applying libertarianism would be a possibility. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean,
So the
it's gonna be
reason why
make it,
I would
but
argue that sending U.S. citizens to CCOT is not just authoritarian, but it's fascist, is because it's like a pretty clear suppression of a person's individual liberty. If you're sent to CCOT, you lose all your rights, like literally all your
mm,
rights. You've lost all of them.
that's not how it would have been sent, though.
So
Like,
do you acknowledge that CCOT is like a torture prison, like they torture people there?
it's a pretty inhumane place. Yeah,
So if you're sent to CCOT, what's your how does that work with your right to avoid cruel and unusual punishment? Like, what's your protection?
it's what's my protection?
Like, if you're
You don't have any protection in the gulags either, brother. That
yeah, I
doesn't
would
make it fascist. The gulags don't make it fascist, right? It just makes it authoritarian.
I would argue that the Gulag. I would argue Stalin was pretty close, if not outright fascist. He's pretty damn close. Uh, like there. So, do you know what the four factors rule are for like copyright claims?
Nope, but tell me.
So like there's these four qualifiers that they that like none of them by themselves tell you if like something is fair use, but you look at all these four factors and like depending on where you are on these four factors, you can make a stronger argument that something's fair use. When it comes to I think something similar is with can be done with like fascism where we look at different characteristics and try to like make an argument that something's fascist when it comes to stuff like
I
suppression of individual
in this
liberties.
case, I still think you are confusing authoritarianism with fascism. Because while Stalin is very authoritarian and he has a lot of overlap with authoritarian fascism, he wasn't a fascist necessarily, at least not in ideology,
Okay, what makes Stalin not a fascist?
because he was openly calling himself a communist.
So just calling
And he
yourself
was doing
something.
everything under the guise of communism. Yeah. I mean, I don't agree. I don't think it's necessarily like pure communism or whatever that he did, but it's obviously his version of communism, just like the CCP today would call itself communist, even though you could argue in a myriad different kind of ways that it's not actually a communist state at the moment.
So if Hitler called himself like a national socialist instead of a fascist, you'd argue that he can't be a
That is what he
fascist.
did, right? That is what Hitler did. He called himself a national socialist and not called himself a. He had respect for fascism, I think, if my memory serves me right, but he called himself a national socialist, and he openly admitted that his ideas came from the socialist side of his ideas. He is considered himself a left wing person.
So you would argue that Hitler isn't fascist?
It is a variation of fascism because he pulled it through a completely different. Like he went all the way into racial superiority and stuff.
Yeah, but you said earlier that if you call yourself a socialist, then you can't be a fascist.
I didn't say that.
Well, when I asked you if Stalin was a fascist, you said that he called himself a socialist.
Yeah, that's because he calls himself a socialist.
Okay, but if that's not a disqualifier, then how is he not a fascist?
Are Mormons Christians?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of Christians would say no. Mormons say that would say they are Christians. But a lot of other people would say they're not Christians because they're Mormons because they have their own religious book, they have their own made up prophet and everything else. They follow their own little made up religion,
Okay.
right?
And how is this
So why should
analogous?
Christians? Well, because who you say you are, like who determines what you are? Is that what others people think of you, or what you think of yourself?
I would imagine it would be what other people think of you, because it's a categorization.
Mm,
Okay,
depends if you can define it correctly. Yes,
let,
but if
let me
let's
put it
say
like this. Let me put it like this. Okay, uh, let's say I were to stab somebody in until they died, and then somebody would ask me, "Hey, you just murdered this guy. Like, what was the deal?" And I say, "No, I didn't murder this guy. I was doing sharp first aid. Okay, I was
well, we can go this the other way. Is a trans woman a woman?
that's gonna be like a 2 hour conversation, dude.
No, it's the same principle basically. If they say, "Oh, I am a woman because I feel like I'm a woman," but everybody else around you sees you as a man, are you then a woman or a man? It's the exact same question basically. Is your opinion more important about yourself, or is the opinion of other people about the situation? Because objectively speaking, a trans woman is a man pretending to be a woman. That is the objective physiological, biological truth. What their internal perspective might be completely something different. It might be valid in their perspective, but that doesn't change the situation for everybody else around them.
Okay, so without getting too deep into the trans debate, you
So,
just
if Hitler says he's a national socialist, that is what he believes, right? It might be that he does completely different things than national socialism, or it might be that he's acting like a fascist, it might be like authoritarian. But if he believes he is something, then you should take their word on it, right?
uh, if we're talking
Because
about
that
an
is, at
ideology,
the very least, it is something what they themselves believe.
uh, I,
Stalin says he's a communist, and he doesn't call himself a fascist or a Nazi, even if he has many things in common with them.
I think you would have a point if you hadn't argued that fascism is a government type. If you want to argue that it's an ideology, then sure, you could argue that he's something.
It is both an ideology and a government type.
Wouldn't that mean that there's two different definitions?
Yeah, depending on which one you're trying to qualify as. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm arguing fascism as an ideology.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's
But
what I
then
mean when I say
Trump absolutely isn't a fascist
I didn't
because
say
he's very
Trump.
pro liberalism.
I didn't say Trump was a fascist. I was saying that one thing that he said that he wanted to do would be a fascist thing if he did it.
It would still wouldn't be fascist. It would be authoritarian.
He, well, it's a suppression of individual liberty. That's a component of fascism.
Yeah, but just because something has a single component of fascism doesn't make it all fascist. Remember, that's just what you just said. Was that you have to apply multiple factors of validation.
Sure, but this is like a really huge like impact on that one factor. And like if we could argue like I think we could argue like the if we try to get into his mind like there could be intents like he might be wanting to send people uh, over to CCOT from like some sort of like nationalist idea like the idea like we don't really view these people as Americans so we're sending them there so that they lose their
Well, the
American
question is,
liberties.
are they? Are we questioning non-American citizens being sent there?
uh,
In
uh,
which case, it has nothing to do at all with that. And if it are citizens, we should be questioning: are they being sent still under U.S. jurisdiction, or are they completely taking away the jurisdiction?
well
Because you
CCOT.
can make laws, like Trump can make laws with Congress that gives him the power to send prisoners overseas and have them be um, held prisoner overseas, but remain under U.S. jurisdiction. In the same way that diplomats and embassy personnel remain under U.S. jurisdiction, even if they are abroad. It's
um
completely legal to do that.
it,
There's no law right now that allows it, though. Like he can't actually just send people over there, legally speaking, because he doesn't have any legal power to do so right now. But if he were to go to Congress and Congress would agree with him, and they would make a law about it, it would be perfectly legal.
it would be legal, but I would still argue that you're suppressing people's individual liberties. So let's say,
But they don't need. He can guarantee that their right to attorney and everything else remains intact. He doesn't need to take that away. That has to absolutely become part of the law if he were to try and send people overseas into prisons. Of course, like you couldn't take away those rights. But he hasn't advocated for taking away those rights either.
you'd basically have
He's
to.
just he's just saying, I want to send them to El Salvador and in those prisons that they got there, so he doesn't need to deal with it. He's not saying anything about taking away their rights.
So they basically have to like completely change the way CCOT works in order to not have somebody's right to cruel to avoid cruel and unusual punishment to be infringed.
Yeah,
Like
but see, cruel and unusual punishment is subjective. What was cruel and unusual 100 years isn't the same as today. So the thing is a subjective.
do you think if we had an American prison that was like CCOT, that it would survive constitutional muster?
I already told you. Right now, if you were to send them into actual CCOT, that's not legal. But it doesn't mean you can't send prisoners overseas into prisons.
I mean, you can do that. We've done it before with Gitmo, but I would argue that
Yeah,
I would
but
argue
those weren't really U.S. citizens, so it doesn't actually count, right?
didn't we actually send U.S. citizens to Gitmo?
Yeah, probably.
I thought we did under the Bush administration.
I don't know. Let me ask ChatGPT. Maybe
ChatGPT,
it.
that's always reliable.
Yeah, I know.
I say that,
It
but I
likes
brought up
to.
ChatGPT to define fascism. So
For real, I did the exact same thing. Just to have a little spreadsheet here.
yeah.
Did the USA ever since U.S. citizens to get more? Yes, it was very rare and highly controversial. Blah 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 blah. America. Uh,
So
well, apparently U.S. citizens were sent to Gitmo, bro.
yeah, and that's like I would argue that's fascist, but you're obviously arguing the opposite. And the argument,
I'm arguing that it's an overreach of power and it's authoritarian, but it's
sure.
not fascist. Because how do you want to define this as fascist as opposed to authoritarianism, overstretching your power?
So I would argue that authoritarianism is overstretching your power, and I would argue that fascism is when it's like a severe like attack on individual liberties. If we're looking at a singular action and not like an entire like government.
But not so you're defining fascism as an attack on liberal rights,
Well,
libertarian rights.
when we're talking about an individual action, so uh, if we were
Because
gonna,
I will absolutely agree that fascism has elements of being anti-liberalism, for example, but not every act that is anti-liberalism is necessarily fascist.
sure.
I think it qualifies way better under the nomiker of being called an authoritarian act.
I would agree. Like anything I would call fascist, I would well, I'd have to think about that. Almost
Because I
anything I would.
definitely think it is definitely an authoritarian move by Trump to push these people to El Salvador and prisons, for example. That's absolutely an authoritarian move, but it is not a fascist. It's not motivated by any fascist ideas, so it's not fascist in nature.
Okay, let me ask you. What would you consider a fascist action that a non-fascist government could take? Like an example.
A fascist action that a non-fascist nation could take. You see, I think fascism is more like a flavor, right? Something can be fascistly was motivated through fascism, but something isn't inherently fascist. Like all the components that make up fascism individually, they don't make it fascism,
I agree with that.
right?
If we're talking about,
For example, like ChatGPT here, it defines fascism as dictatorial power, ultranationalism, militarism and violence, suppression of dissent, corporatism, and anti-communism and anti-liberalism. That's how it's like the 6 points. It's summed it up here. But each one of these points by themselves can exist without it being fascist. And suppression of dissent is common in communist states too. That doesn't mean that every communist state is a fascist state. Militarism and violence is rampant in jingoistic states, but it doesn't make it fascist either. Ultranationalism also exists in a country, but just because you're ultranational doesn't mean you need to have suppression of dissent or corporatism or any of the other things. And dictatorships don't necessarily rely on ultranationalism or any of the other points made. So it's a combination of things that make something fascist.
yeah, but that's for a state. The idea that you have all these qualifiers in order for a state to be
Yeah, but
considered a fascist.
a fascist believes that they need to use all of these elements at the same time to reach their goals. And so if Trump was a fascist and he would send these people because he doesn't want, for example, he doesn't want non-whites in the country, for example. And he said like all the non-whites have to go to El Salvador because they're non-whites and we don't want them in this country. So we don't want anybody of the non-whites stinking up our prisons, right? Then it would be fascist because he's doing it with the intent of with the ideological intent of fascists behind that. It's the fascist ideology is the motivation for that decision, right? There's a fascist intent behind that action, but
Okay.
he's not doing it for that reason.
Oh, we don't know why he would want to do that. He hasn't.
We don't know the exact reason, but because we don't know, we should give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, there's nothing that indicates that he's actually fascist. Is he authoritarian? Kinda, yeah. I mean, I would agree on that one. But there's no direct fascist intent there.
So you
You
wouldn't.
can call it like you can call him a sexist or whatever, or that he has some or a narcissist or whatever. There's all evidence for that, but there is no evidence that he's a fascist.
You think a non-fascist could try to implement fascist policy?
You could have policy that has elements of what would normally be considered a fascist in under different circumstances, yes,
That's what I'm arguing, by the way.
but there is no fascist intent behind it, and it doesn't make it fascist.
Okay, let's say the Australian government.
Because then I can argue that his actions to send the people to El Salvador is it's actually communist. Because in my opinion, authoritarian overreach equates communism, and so is authoritarian overreach trying to send people to El Salvador, is actually proof of his communist ideas. You see how it stops making sense now?
The issue is communism has like a much more clear definition than fascism does. Like there's elements we can point to that be like these are the steps you could do to take your government from whatever it is now to and turn it into a communist state. The same isn't really true for fascism. Like we can say we could say that a state that has these elements could be described as fascist, but it's not like hard, like clear and cut. That's why you're saying like Stalin wasn't a fascist, even though he did many of the same things that Hitler did.
He was obviously an authoritarian.
Yeah, he was an authoritarian.
Yeah, and
I would argue,
lots of fascists are authoritarian, but that doesn't make Stalin a fascist.
I would argue he's at least really, really close to meeting the definition of fascism.
In my opinion, fascism and communism are incredibly close to each other.
Uh, as
Like
ideologies, maybe.
fascism as an idea is mostly about making the state as powerful as possible in service of the people, at least in theory. And communism is empowering the people, empowering the state for the people. There's not much of a difference really there, except that traditionally speaking, fascists and National Socialists would be basically like communism, but with only one people in mind, right? So it's focused on one nation, while communism as a whole is focused on mankind, all people. That's why in communist society they would not make a distinction between the different ethnic populations, right? Because everybody's the same. Everybody is going to become a Red Soviet citizen. So everybody is the same citizen. Whereas in the National Socialist ideology, it was all about the German people, and everybody else was their own people. So the Nazi Party was about serving Germany and the German people, while nominally the Soviet Union was about serving the people and communism, whereby people just happened to be Russian or happened to be Kazakhstani or Belarusian or Ukrainian or whatever, but there was just one people basically. Well,
they were
for the
somewhat
Nazis, this was
exclusionary.
considered insane because this would deprive the people of their national identity, right? Hitler didn't like the Soviets and communism because it tried to destroy the identity of a nation and take away their history, their culture, their identity. That's why Hitler hated the communists, or at least part of it. But in practice, they're pretty much the same. They both subverted the corporations for their own benefit. They relied on censorship and propaganda to keep everybody in line. They used all the same tactics basically as the other one, but they had a different ideological motivation behind it, the philosophy behind why they do the things they do.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing is why do you do the things you do? And in this case, I don't think Trump is doing this because he has some fascist ideology behind his government policy. He's not doing it out of a fascist ideological sense.
Do you think it's possible to have like certain fascist views without being outright fascist? Because I don't think Trump is necessarily fascist.
Of course, you can have communist ideas without being a communist.
Sure.
Like I believe in socialized healthcare. That doesn't make me a communist. I believe in government infrastructure and schooling and everything else. It doesn't make me a communist.
Okay. Why do you think Trump wants to move American citizens to CCOT?
Because he's a cheap motherfucker. It's a cheaper solution. And he's a businessman. He thinks, oh, number smaller than other number, it means more profit.
I feel like the logistics alone would make it more expensive, especially for guaranteeing
Probably
the
not.
rights.
If you look at how expensive prisons are in America, it's a for-profit model. And then you compare it to the prices they pay in fucking El Salvador. That shit is way cheaper.
Yeah, but it's cheaper in El Salvador because they don't guarantee rights for the people who are in them.
And that just happens to be also the case, yes.
Yeah, if you look at
But
like
it is
this,
cheaper, right? It is cheaper. It is objectively cheaper.
yeah, they don't even have individual cells in CCOT. They are all like,
Yeah, true. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying Sea God is in any way human or yeah, it's in no way human. You know, it's not humane. I mean, it's a fucking zoo out there. It's like living in hell on earth.
yeah,
Like I'm not arguing that it's a good thing. It's a prison. It's one of the most horrible prisons out there.
I would argue that if you were to send somebody to one of the most horrible prisons out there, you have to have like some serious lack of interest in the human rights of the people you're sending there. Like
I don't
you,
know if they're literally pedophiles, the people that did the most horrible shit. I don't really give a shit, bro. I really don't give a shit.
okay, but in America we still give pedophiles certain civil rights. Actually, in America we give
Yeah,
non-citizens certain civil rights.
yeah, that's fine. That's your choice, but it doesn't need to be that way. That's the choice of the people. People decide that doesn't count anymore, then it doesn't count anymore.
That's true. You wouldn't view that as like a move towards authoritarianism.
Mm,
I mean, part of the like the liberal ideology is we give even the worst criminals certain benefits of the doubt, like the idea innocent until proven guilty. That's a liberal idea. That
yeah, but once you're proven guilty, it's a completely different story, isn't it? Like I completely agree with innocent until proven guilty. And even in that system, there's bound to be mistakes. There's bound to be people who are innocent and who get convicted. They get sent to prison, right?
yep.
It happens. But just because it happens doesn't mean you got to stop punishing the criminals.
Well, they're in jail. That's punishment.
Yeah, but if they get free, like how you organize that jail is important as well. Because if it's just a free board and you can get to have parties, like there's used to be prisons in Middle America where you could just have parties. They
Yeah,
could
New
just walk in
State
and out of the
Penitentiary.
prison. Yeah, but they were basically open prisons, and the prisons were controlled by the prisoners themselves. There was no real prison there system actually. It was just gang controlled, right?
Sure.
But that's not really justice either, then, is it?
Uh,
For the victims,
I don't know. You
like, it
think we
might be
should be
nice.
like
It might
soft?
be nice for the criminals when there's no real punishment or crime that you have to pay for,
Do,
and
do,
while you're in prison.
do you think it would be justice if we had like fucking pedophiles in a Holocaust-like conditions?
Technically, if you're a pedophile, I think you deserve the death penalty.
Yeah, but like the death penalty is like different than like Holocaust-like conditions. Like we even when we give people the death
The
penalty,
Holocaust situations eventually lead to your death, don't they? So,
yeah, but like it's different to be given a lethal injection or a bullet to the head than to be starved to death.
well, you could be starved to death and work to death at the same time. That way, you still make a little profit.
Hmm.
I mean, it's a Rimworld way, isn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't want a society like how I run colonies in Rimworld.
That's a good point, right?
Yeah.
Ideally, of course, that would not be the case. I mean, um,
I don't know. I view it as like a pretty Western civilization thing that we guarantee like some humane treatment of like even criminals.
yeah, but what kind of criminals? Like, if you stole something, you went to prison. Sure, absolutely. You know, go into rehabilitation, teach them skills, so that when they get back out, they can do something good with their lives, right? Absolutely. But an actual like sexual predator that hunts children? Oh hell no, bro. Hell no. It's fucking death penalty in my opinion. Death penalty or work to death.
Okay, but like I don't generally agree with the death penalty, but I think like if you do the death penalty, like the punishment is the death. It's not like we don't work them to death. Like we treat them humanely
Oh, but you
up until
probably
the point.
should. I mean, that's the way they can repay their price to society. I think if you really did something that heinous, you should be worked to death, and all the profit made from your blood and sweat should go to the victim
Well, if you have like a
as a
20-year-old
repayment.
who like killed 50 people in a bombing attack,
What do you mean?
so we have like a really really young person
Yeah,
who did something fucked up that resulted in like 50 people dying.
yeah.
So you don't think like
Yeah,
this
too bad, little. Too bad.
you don't think like you should just be punished with like life in prison with the possibility of parole?
Depends on how he was motivated to do it.
Well, that's the thing. Like, we a lot of the times we have like really really bad people. We keep them in life, but they have like the possibility of parole. They have an appeal process. They can make the case that they can that what they did was
If you
like.
did something like this is my personal opinion. If you did something really bad, like you killed somebody else, right? I think it's up to the victim, people of the victim, to decide if you get free or not.
Well, if you
It's
kill
their
someone, the
choice.
victim can't say anything.
I mean, the family of the victim, the ones who are left behind, the
Okay.
secondary victims, basically. Right? So if you kill somebody, it's up to, in my opinion, it's and like let's say you would normally get like the death penalty for it, right? I think it's up to the victims of the secondary victims to decide if they will forgive you, in which case you can get parole or not.
What if somebody doesn't get forgiven and they have the possibility of being rehabilitated? Like, what if their
Too
crime
bad,
was a
bro.
simple crime of passion?
Crime of passion in what sense?
Let's
Passion as in passion as in you really like little children and you want to fuck
no.
them.
Let's say somebody
But
in the
that's a
middle of an
passion too, bro.
let's say somebody in the
Like
middle
I
of an argument, they stabbed their spouse in the stomach and then disemboweled them.
stabbed their spouse in the stomach and disemboweled them,
Yeah,
bro. That's not accident. That's not an accident.
I didn't say accident. I said crime of
That,
passion.
that that's murder, bro.
I said crime of passion. So they stabbed their spouse in the stomach and they disemboweled them, but like it was determined, like they were
Yeah,
determined, like they were in like an extreme
secondary
emotional
victims get to
state.
decide it. The secondary victims get to decide if you go for life or not.
Even if psychologists argue that this person can be rehabilitated.
Yep, fuck them.
Like, what if this person like becomes like a devout
What
Christian?
if that person does not actually? I don't give a shit if you're devout Christian or not, bro. This is such a cop out. Like just because you're Christian doesn't make you any better.
Sure. I just use that as an example, like, because we have a certain idea of like the
You
moral
can
aspect.
convert to Islam for all I care. That doesn't make you a better person. And, so many people go to prison and then convert to Islam. Trust me, bro. It's not any better.
Okay. So you don't really believe in rehabilitation for bad people?
Yeah, yeah, of course it is. Like I said, if you stole something, you did something bad, right?
Well, when you
Because of
say
your background, then there's obviously a room for rehabilitation there. Like people that don't have any skills, so they don't have anything to do in life. You got to give them those skills. You got to help them develop their psychology, so they can interact with society in a more meaningful and constructive way. And then you send them back out. In that sense, the prison system is extremely inadequate at the moment at doing that. You
so,
should rehabilitate whoever you can really rehabilitate in a meaningful, sensible way, and you should take out all the predators and the dangerous people that have a risk of repeat, a serious risk of repeat, like a child predator. You can punish them, you can let them back out in society, but they're always going to be a risk. In
what if
that
they're
sense, you shouldn't take the risk. You should just finish the job. They already committed the crime.
what if a child predator is giving medication that kills their sex drive?
Look, if you're like strictly speaking, if you're just a pedophile, there's nothing wrong with being a pedophile. If you just like little kids, that's your problem. The moment you actually do something with the kids, then it's fucking over, bro. Like I don't care. Like there's nothing wrong with a person who has those feelings. I assume it's something that's fucked up in their brain, right? It's not. It's out of their control. Just like gay people, like other gay men, lesbians, like other. It's something in their mind, right? I'm not gonna judge about that. There's their own problem, their own issues. But if you like little kids, again, your problem, not everybody else. You don't have a right to sexually abuse children just because you have that feeling, right?
Sure, but like
So
everybody
people
who's in
who have
prison.
those feelings are not, by definition, guilty of sexual child abuse, right? So, strictly speaking, pedophiles, just by being a pedophile, isn't like a death sentence. But if you do act on those actions or those desires, you are a sexual predator. And by definition, sexual predators tend to repeat that shit. There is in almost no way that you can excuse that or to
Sure.
let them back out when there's such a gigantic risk that they will repeat.
Well, the other countries have managed to rehabilitate pedophiles.
And how many are there are repeaters? There's a massive amount of repeat.
Well, I'm guessing that the countries where they rehabilitate them by castrating, I'm guessing not many of those people repeat. But then there's other countries where they're giving medication that kills their sex drive.
Yeah, until they stop taking those medications, and then they're back to square one, isn't it?
Sure, and they should have like check-ins to make sure they're still taking their
Well,
medication.
I'm willing to go with that option. If you're a pedophile, I think by definition you should have your balls chopped.
Okay, what about murderers? They don't usually. Usually, if somebody kills somebody, they only ever kill one person. They don't
Yeah,
typically repeat.
depends on what you do, right?
So, do you think
If you did
murderers
it,
should be rehabilitated?
if I think you should remain part of the state.
I mean, they could be rehabilitated and still have like state checkups, like being like, hey, you're not having any homicidal thoughts, are you? Like, you can still have them
There
basically
are
be.
certain jobs which are very risky for the human body, right? There's certain jobs that are just nobody really wants to do them because they tend to kill you a lot, right? Those jobs are perfect for those people.
Yeah, I actually work one of those jobs.
What kind of work do you do?
I work in a warehouse. A lot of the people I work with are ex-cons.
Ah, all right. What kind of cons you got?
Um,
What do they
well,
not say?
I hate to say that I have done background checks on some of my coworkers. There is one
Hmm.
guy who I worked with who apparently he had just gotten out of prison for armed robbery. So that was
Yeah,
interesting. I didn't like the guy. He yelled at me a lot.
yeah. Well, it's rehabilitatable, I would say.
I mean, he's working. I didn't say he was a good person, but yeah.
Yeah. That the worst one you got, or
No, there's this guy who sits next to me at lunch who he's on the sex offender registry. I don't remember why.
yeah. Well, rehabilitatable still, I would say.
I think
In
somebody
everybody
told
can make
me.
a fuck up, I guess.
I think somebody told me it was like some digital shit. Like I think somebody told me that he like solicited nudes from a minor, but he didn't like fuck somebody.
Well, still rehabilitatable, I would say. Like I just draw the line at when you actually do something with a child, right? If you watch child porn online, it's not the worst thing in the world. Like it's disgusting, it's fucked up, but it's not the same as actually fiddling with a child. You're not harming them directly, right?
Yeah, that gets a lot of 4chaners off the hook.
Probably, yeah. I mean, there's bound to be in the mountains of porn I watched in the past. There were probably some underage girls in there.
Ooh,
Right?
yeah.
Not everyone. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, like it's not like I'm looking for the underage, but I mean, some of them might be 17 or right before their legal age, for example, or the porn might be have made in a country where it is legal age, but it's not legal age in my country,
What country you live in?
right? I'm in from the Netherlands,
The Netherlands? Yeah, I can detect an accent.
right? I got a Dutchy accent.
Yeah, a little bit.
All right, that's
Uh,
cool.
I knew you were European. I was just trying to figure out what country you're from.
Yeah, I got.
So yeah,
Especially in the case of pedophile, I think it's very On the one hand, I want to sympathize because it's a it's similar to like you have desires for something that will never reciprocate, right?
Yeah.
You have a desire for something that also should never reciprocate, but you still have those desires, right? Just like every normal person has desires for the other gender, or in some cases for the same gender,
Do you feel
but
the
that's not
same
going
way
to go
about?
away. Gabe? Hmm?
Do you feel the same way about people who fuck animals?
Mm, it's definitely fucking degenerates, bro. Like there's something fucked up with that.
I
At the
mean, like,
same time, don't really, I don't think it's, um, I wouldn't send you to prison for that. At least not in the same way. I think it's completely different. And secondly, like, I think you can make the animals like it.
I mean, you can make a child like
I,
it, but it's still wrong.
yeah, but a child's a child, and an animal's an animal.
Yeah.
Like they have those special breeding apparatus for horses, right? So that the horse basically fucks into a long tube and then gets masturbated, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they got that for humans too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that. The flashlight things, right? I
Yes.
forgot about the remote. Yes, but like, so the zoophile basically enjoys that, right? Like he gets off on the fact that the horse likes it, basically. Yeah, but is it really that different from the guy that doesn't like it and does it as a job? The horse still getting off, right?
So here's the argument I would give. So the reason why it's wrong to fuck a child is because they can't give informed consent. But
Yeah.
if we acknowledge that, there is no animal on Earth other than a human that can give informed consent. So if
Yeah,
it's
that's
statutory
because
rape,
animals.
yeah. So if it's statutory rape to have sex with a minor, then you're doing something similar if you have sex with an animal.
Yeah, you could argue that you're raping the animal. That's absolutely true. But every animal rapes every other animal too.
Yeah, but
That's why I say it's degenerate. That's why I'm saying it's degenerate because you're still doing something you shouldn't be doing. But it's not the same as doing it to a human being.
sure, it's worse to
Again,
do it.
it still depends if you're brutally raping an animal. It's completely different than if the animal is consenting to some degree that you find normal. Like sometimes, like I used to have a cat, and my sister would like rubber feet on the couch, and the cat would somehow get aroused by that and start humping her foot, and the cat would basically just jizz all over her socks, basically, right? That's basically the same thing, right?
Kind of. It's similar.
Kind of, right?
It
Yeah, like my sister would entice it intentionally just to have it get off on her foot on her sock, right? It started as an accident, as just as fun. Like she was just sitting on the couch. She was moving her legs, and the cat got aroused for some reason for that, and then just started humping on her foot. And after that, she could just entice it to do it again because it was kind of funny, right? It was funny to look at the time, you know. But that's not rape, right? She didn't force it to anything. She didn't do anything. She didn't penetrate the cat, for example, right? The cat was just aroused and acted on it.
yeah.
Right? That's a type of zoophile behavior, I would suggest. But it's not that she was an actual zoophile, like yeah, she wasn't into that stuff like as a normal thing, right? It's not like she actually got off on that herself. She just found it funny. But let's say somebody does get off on that, right? They have they get a sexual arousal from that act. Is that necessarily bad? I say it would say it's degenerate, but it's not something I would send you to prison over.
All right.
If you started raping goats, for example, right, and the goats were starting to bleed from the inside out, that's a fucking different thing. Then it's animal abuse, because then you're doing something detrimental to the animal.
I feel like we could probably talk about this for another like 2 hours, but
Yeah.
I think we
Let's
finished our
move back to the original topic. Or
I think we kind of finished our original topic. So yeah,
but basically, you're saying that just because Trump wants to send people overseas, it's a fascist move.
um, it's more like specifically the idea that the type of prison that he wants to send people into is one where their individual liberties aren't respected. Like the
And how do
liberty.
you know that their individual liberties won't be respected? Because he can't send them there anyway, unless he makes a bill or a law with Congress that allows him to do that. And by doing so, he would have to amend or address the constitutional rights of those citizens.
I mean,
So
you
he
can.
wouldn't send them there without giving them the same rights as U.S. citizens.
I mean, you can do something legally and it would still be fascist. Like we.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you can legalize fascism,
So that's not really like a counter argument against that. Like
but
just because
what
you.
exact? Like, I agree that if sending those people to El Salvador would be an authoritarian move, but how are you going to define it as fascism? Because it can only be fascist if it is with some intent of fascist ideology behind it.
I would
There is no
argue.
fascist ideology behind it.
I would argue that the intent is to deny them their rights. Like the idea is to seem really, really tough on these people in a way where we send them to a place where they lose their American protections. So I would argue that's a fascist idea.
But does Trump explicitly say that he wants to take away their rights?
No, but he's like the action itself would take away their rights.
But not if he can't send them there without a law by Congress. And by if he would have to make it go through Congress, Congress would bring up the constitutional rights, and they would have to amend the law in such a way that their constitutional rights would be maintained even while in an El Salvadorian prison.
Did we do that with
Even
the?
if it, you make a good point there. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's an authoritarian overreach, but it's not fascist in nature. If you define everything that is libertarian as fascist, then you can make anything fascist. But that isn't what fascism is about. Then you're just trying to find the broadest possible definition to use to slur fascism for everything.
I think like if I were to say like if I were to use the broadest possible definition, like I think there's people who would say like ICE is inherently fascist. Like I think that would be like the broadest possible definition. I'm taking a more like
Do you think ICE is fascist?
no.
Well, for the exact same reason, sending them to El Salvador prisons is also not fascist.
No, I would argue that sending
It's
undocumented.
absolutely an overreach of power, but and sending undocumented is absolutely not fascist either. It's still very authoritarian and probably completely inhumane. But
Well, I wouldn't argue that sending undocumented people over there is fascist. I would argue it's wrong. I would argue it's authoritarian, but I'm specifically saying the idea of sending American citizens there is fascist. Because we have different rights and protections and expectations of American citizens.
yes, but there's nothing that inherently says that their rights won't be respected there.
Well, their right
Yeah,
to.
they'll have a fucking they'll have an properly probably incredibly awful prison,
Yeah, but that
but it's
alone,
probably not. Huh?
that alone is against their right to avoid a cruel and unusual punishment.
Depends on how you define cruel and unusual punishment.
We'd have prisons like that here in the United States. Believe me, the
Yeah, but
prison.
if you look at prison systems of 150 years ago, right? Didn't they get chained together and were first to build the railroad or some shit?
Yeah.
What's that? Is that not cruel and unusual punishment?
We don't.
Apparently, people back then was completely normal.
We also used to have kids working in factories. Like we've changed our
There's
values over time.
there's technically nothing wrong with kids working in the factories.
We used to have literal slaves, despite our constitution supposedly having protections for all
We
people.
still have slaves. We just call them undocumented immigrants now.
Sure, I would argue H-1B visas are a lot closer to slavery.
Well, it's cheap labor, basically, right?
Yeah,
But
they're
it
basically
functions as the same. Yeah.
they're basically indentured servants.
Not indentured server. They're not indentured, man.
Well, people
How
on
are they
H-1B visas
indentured?
are.
You can go back home, right? There's nothing that says that you're indebted to somebody. If you don't want to work anymore, you can just leave.
Yeah, but you can't get a different job. That's the issue.
Yeah, but you don't deserve the other job because you're not a citizen. You don't have a right to the other jobs.
Sure, but if you had indentured servants, then they also would be in the same boat. They don't have a
I,
right
I'm
to.
like I'm not going to argue that it's not there's not some form of exploitation there because there's absolutely exploitation in it, but it's not the same level of exploitation as indentured servitude is. Like for that, if by that same argument you could say that everybody is in indentured servitude because everybody has to work to survive, right?
That's
You
an
don't really
argument.
have a choice or not to work. So everybody would be considered a slave if you use the same definitions.
That's an argument a lot of
Everybody is
socialists
forced to
make.
work. Yeah, I know it's in some degree it is actually a true argument as well. I believe because to some degree you don't have the choice. There is also no free land you can go anywhere to go and homestead yourself, right? There's nowhere you can go where you can be independent of the system. So in some way you are absolutely a slave of the system because there's nowhere you can go, right? A lot of land in the United States is owned by somebody. You can't go into the forest and just live off yourself without being already in some form doing something illegal. Because you're trespassing on land, you're breaking some kind of law that supposedly makes you an illegal or makes you a criminal of some kind of act, right? So there's nothing you can do in the system that gives you complete and actual freedom. You're always a slave to the system in some way. You have to give up something of yourself to the system just to survive.
Yeah. Well, that's an issue with. I want to say it's an issue with capitalism, but to be honest, the same thing happens in socialism. So I don't know if it's an issue with the
It's
owner.
even it's technically even worse than socialism because then the state tells you what kind of jobs you can do.
Well, there's different types of socialism, but like if you have an economy, you can't have an economy and like not have people who aren't contributing to it.
Well, you can have an economy where people are not contributing to it, but it's not very optimal for the system, so the system doesn't allow it because everybody would opt out of the system if they could do that.
Yeah.
And the system is intentionally designed in order to extract the most out of basically everybody.
That's one of the arguments that makes me a little bit hesitant about UBI.
Yeah, UBI essentially will make everybody also dependent on it, and therefore they will be sort of enslaved mentally to the system. There's absolutely a huge psychological danger in the UBI. Like I'll be honest, I live on social welfare.
In the
Right?
Netherlands?
Yeah, I live in the Netherlands. We got a really good social welfare program.
Yeah, but do you have a job?
No, I don't.
You don't?
Nope.
So you're just like
I do.
completely provided for by the state?
Yep.
And like, is this like some sort of like disability program or something like that?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, that's a little bit different. Because we have disability.
Yes, but also no. Let me explain why. Because I have a disability program. So, but even if I did not have the disability program, I would just be under a different under a different social welfare program. But I get basically the same benefits. But it doesn't actually matter. The only difference is in my case, I don't need to apply for a job every so often, or I would be in the other system and I would be applying for fake jobs the whole time. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's just in my case, I don't need to apply for a job because they basically said like, well, there's a lot of different problems with you. You're going to be hard to employ anywhere else. But technically, I could be employed because I right now I'm actually doing pretty well physically, but it could be that in a year from now I wouldn't be able to walk or something because I have arthritis in my limbs. It's completely clean, so now I don't have any problems. But there are days where I would have trouble walking, so I couldn't do any physical jobs basically. And I've had problems in the past with my eyes, where I would get like an eye operation. I wouldn't be able to see for like a quarter of a year to half a year, or I'd basically be half blind the whole time.
Oh.
But right now, everything is pretty much it's like living for free basically right now, right? But it's
Yeah.
because I have my own personal things that keep me motivated. But I've seen what it does to other people as well, and just basically free income the whole time.
Well, I think the argument, the argument for a UBI system that I consider would be like it would be a really low amount. So like like I would support one where you probably couldn't live off of UBI alone, but I do
Well,
know
that's the
some.
idea, right? That would slowly increase UBI over time to ensure basic living standards, right? But you can just go and goblin mode and just reduce all your expenses to the absolute minimum.
Uh,
Like I live in a 3 by 3 cube, for example, right? I live in a tiny room. I only eat the basic absolute necessities that I need. I only buy clothes like maybe once every 2 years or 3 years, and I then just buy or I ask for secondhand stuff from other people. There's so many ways you can reduce your costs down as much as you want.
yeah, but I'm looking at some of the programs in my state. I tried to apply for food stamps. Do you know what those
Hmm.
are?
Hmm.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
tried to apply for food stamps, and I was told that in order for a person living on themselves to be able to get food stamps, they have to make like $20,000 at max. And I'm asking the person on the line, how are people surviving on $20,000 with just food stamps?
Bro, I survive on 15,000. What are you talking about?
Well, here, it's a kind of a. It's hard for me to imagine somebody budgeting that way.
All right, very easy. You live as minimally as possible. You don't spend anything. That's how it works, man.
Well, the minimum rent you can find around where I live would be about $800 a month.
Yeah, for an apartment. But what if you can get like a single room?
Um,
Yeah, it's half the price, man.
I think there's
Only
cheap.
400 in that case.
I think there are cheaper apartments here, but they're income based, so
No, no, no.
maybe
You're
they live
you're
more.
not going for an apartment. That's not your price range if you're on UBI, bro. You're going for a room, right? Like you got roommates. I live with 4 other roommates,
Mm.
right? That's the life, bro. Eternal roommate life. It's like the Soviet communes.
I could not live with roommates.
No, you do tend to go crazy after a while, but if you have good roommates, it's actually really nice living. Like I got some really nice roommates right now. It's really nice. But I had points in my life. There was really this one crazy Polish woman. She would like grab a knife and start scratching the wall in the middle of the night. Right? Like that was the fucking psycho shit, bro.
Yeah, I wonder what the deal with that
But
is.
she was just fucking depressed and angry with life, and her motivation to keep living was to make life a shit for everybody else too.
Oh well, I don't think we're gonna see any like big agreement on the hell
But
on the
your
fascism
but your
discussion.
your 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 argument is that um what he's doing is fascist because it's anti-libertarian. I mean,
Well, no, it's because
technically, I can't.
it
Yeah,
infringes
because it
on
infringes.
civil liberties that we otherwise guarantee people. And like I would
Yes,
argue
but
that's
that
the intent.
that is also authoritarian. It's more authoritarian than fascist in nature.
Well, almost
Because
everything
even
that's
before,
fascist is authoritarian.
yeah, but in that case, a lot of what socialism or communism does is also authoritarian.
I agree with that.
And then is it also fascist?
Uh, some of it probably is. That's why I argue that Stalin was, if not fascist, he was really close to it.
Because communists, like, if you take communism to what it effectively actually results in, it is also anti-libertarian or anti-liberal. Because your individual rights do not matter in the face of the collective, right? And if we're going to take that position, you could say that Trump sending over um, people he doesn't want to have, right? He wants to send the people he doesn't like, wants to send them to El Salvador. That's a communist idea because he's just trying to get rid of the people that don't serve him,
Well, I would argue that a communist and a fascist idea aren't mutually exclusive.
right? Because they're mostly acting from authoritarianism.
Sure, yeah.
So the act of what he's doing is authoritarian. You could say it has tastes of fascism. Fascists would do the same, but it doesn't make it fascist because it's not motivated out of fascism. If I hurt a gay person, it could be because I hate him, right? Then it's a hate crime. But it could also just be just because he's an asshole. Then it's not a hate crime. Just because he's gay doesn't mean me hurting him makes it a hate crime. I have to do it out of the intention because if I do it because he's gay, it's a hate crime. If I do it something because he's just an asshole, it's not a hate crime. It's just me being a dickhead and doing an assault, basically, right?
Yeah.
So the difference between whether it's a hate crime or not is based on the intention of the person. And in this case, I don't think Trump's intention is fascist.
Well, you
His
think
act
he's just trying
isn't
to save
fascist.
money, right?
Is it what?
Well, you think he's just trying to save money, right?
He's trying to take a hard line on immigration and everything, and hard line on crime. Yeah, it's also money because he's a businessman, right? So he thinks like, oh, smaller number in El Salvador, well, let's do it there, basically. So he can go back to his voters and say, oh, I reduced the price of prisons and blah blah blah. I'm so good, blah blah blah,
You don't
right?
think that what he's trying to do to reduce the price indicates like fascist intent, like the idea that
No,
he
no,
sacrifices people's
he's
civil
just a
liberties?
cheapskate. He's just a cheapskate, basically,
Okay.
and he wants to show he's hard on crime. That's why he thinks it's a cool idea to send them to El Salvador because they're pretty inhumane in how they deal with their prison system, right? So that's trying to show how he wants to be hard on crime. It's equally parts for show for the public as it is his actual intention.
I would
But
argue that
there isn't a fascist idea behind it.
if not fascist, that's like in intent, it's like indistinguishable from an action that would be fascist in intent. Then
I mean, he's not doing it out of fascist ideology.
yes, but well, we're making the assumption of what he's thinking. Like if he was doing it out of fascist ideology, it would be a fascist action. It's a move
Yes,
towards a fascist type of authoritarianism.
it's a move towards authoritarianism. It's not a move towards fascism necessarily.
Well, you've been arguing that it's not fascist due to the fact that he doesn't have a fascist intent. If he did have a
Yeah.
fascist intent, would you argue that the action is fascist?
Uh, sure. Yeah. It is authoritarian. It's no. Yeah. If it was motivated out of fascism, yeah, it could absolutely be a fascist act.
Sure. So
But it's not.
I'm arguing that even if we're going to say that it's not fascist, it's basically indistinguishable from a
But
fascist
that's
action.
not true. But it's like if you assaulted a gay man, right? Is it a hate crime just because he's gay?
No.
No.
Well,
But
if I
you could
assaulted,
argue that it is, right? It's the same indistinguishable from a hate crime.
what if I assaulted a gay?
You hurt a gay person, and the gay person got hurt in the process. It's a hate crime.
What if I
And some of the
assaulted?
woke people would probably argue that it's true too.
What if I assaulted a gay person, not for any homophobic reason, but because he was an asshole? But while I assaulted him, I shouted a whole bunch of homophobic slurs at him.
See, you're actually a secret homophobic person.
Yeah, but if I could argue that I didn't do it because he's gay, I've effectively done something that's indistinguishable from a
No,
hate
no,
crime.
it's obviously because it's obviously hate speech, bro. You're obviously doing this because you hate gays.
Yeah, I couldn't just hate the guy and then be like, I can really get under his skin if I say a bunch of
No,
homophobic shit.
he's gay. He's gay. That's why you did it.
Okay. What if he stole $20 from
That,
me?
that's what you claim. Did you sue him for that?
No. I
See,
just beat his ass while shouting homophobic shit.
this is classic and is classic homophobic behavior, man. Thinking you are owed something by gay people.
Okay.
You see what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah, I just disagree with the intent. Like, I do think that there is a fascist intent. I see what your argument is. You're arguing that basically you think that he's doing it in order to save money so he can say, look at how much I saved from the prison
I
system.
don't even know exactly why he's doing it, right? We don't know why he's doing it, but there isn't anything you can say as to whether there is a fascist intent behind it.
What if he opened like a bunch of death camps, but he
I
never
mean,
gave a reason why he did it? Like you have reporters being like, "Hey, why are you throwing all these Jews in these death camps?" He's just like, "I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a reason for it."
is it targeted towards a specific population?
Yeah, it's just Jews. He's just throwing Jews in death camps. He has no writing explaining why he does it. He refuses to answer why he's doing it. We have no way of knowing what he's thinking, but he's just throwing Jews in death camps.
I think he's just an anti-Semite.
Okay, but
Still not
would that be
necessarily a
fascist?
fascist, but no, not necessarily.
Not. It wouldn't
I mean,
necessarily be fascist.
no, not it would strictly speaking would still not be fascist by itself. It would definitely be anti-Semitic. Would definitely be considered ethnic cleansing. It would definitely consider be authoritarian, but it would still not necessarily be fascist.
Okay.
If he was also like a dictator, and he used the military, he propped up the military, and used like jingoistic propaganda and stuff, right? And he was constantly talking about how he has to make the state and the people stronger. Then we have a completely different situation because the Soviet Union also put lots of Jews into prison camps, right?
Yeah, but I would argue there might have been some anti-Semitism in the Soviet Union that could have
Yeah,
contributed
but
to
that's
that.
just because they put them in camps doesn't necessarily mean that they are fascist, because they're clearly doing it out of communist ideas. Their idea of why they put them into the prisons and stuff and the concentration camps is motivated from a communist ideology, because communists believe that all humans are the same. And Jews, the very idea of having your own ethnic group is contradictory to the Soviet idea of the Soviet citizen. You can't have Soviet citizens and Soviet Jews. No, there's only the Soviet citizen. The idea of even claiming to be a different ethnicity is inherently opposite to the Soviet ideal.
All right.
But then killing, deciding you want to get rid of the other people that are not your ethnicity or not the ideological citizen you want to be, that would make you uh, anti-Semitic, for example. but it's not inherently fascist. I get that Nazis are historically considered to be anti-Jewish, right? Specifically because of that reason, because there's a distinction between um, the German people and Jews who live in Germany, for example. There's two different people, right?
Yeah.
Jews recognize themselves as citizens of Germany, but they don't recognize themselves as Germans, not as in the ethnicity of Germans. So they're inherently opposite to some idea, at some ethnic idea of what a German is. But so Nazis are historically considered to be anti-Jewish, but not necessarily because not even because Nazism necessarily is anti-Jewish, but because the idea of Nazism itself has the inherent in and out group behavior, right? So you're either part of the German people or you're not part of the German people. If you're not part of the German people, you're some other group.
Yeah.
That's where the well, not Hitler did get like had some weird other ideas about Jews too, but basically even before Hitler, there was already like Nazism itself as an idea is basically just tribalism on steroids, basically, right?
Yeah.
It's a strongly it's all about aggressive expansion for your tribe, basically. Except in this case, the tribe becomes the whole nation of millions of people instead of your small little community. And in that sense, there's always the idea of the in and out group, and Jews are just the out group in that sense. And so, not Nazism itself has its roots in hyper tribalism, basically. But just because it's hyper tribalism doesn't mean that it's necessarily anti-Jewish. Like you could theoretically have a Nazi state that isn't anti-Jewish necessarily. It would be problematic to have a Nazi state that is not anti everybody else, because it's always about their own race, basically. Because it's always about protecting your own race against every other race. But it doesn't necessarily need to be anti-Jewish.
Well, what would it take for you to call something fascist without explicit like statements that they're doing it for fascist reasons?
Uh,
Like
do you think there's a fascist state right now?
well, I think there's groups of people who I would call fascist.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say like certain Islamic terror groups probably constitute
Ah,
fascist groups.
that's an interesting take, really. I agree completely, actually, with you there. I would say that most of the Islamism movements they're actually very similar to Nazism. Actually, the only difference or the major difference, in my opinion, is that while Nazis are obsessed with racial purity, the Islamist groups are obsessed with religious purity.
Yeah,
That's basically the only real difference in them, right? Because they have the hallmarks of fascism and Nazism otherwise, like dictatorial power. They love strong leaders. Ultranationalism, sure, but then bend it towards ultra zealotry. Like it's all about the ummah, right? The religious community, the pure believers, basically. So it's not nationalism, but it's like a nationalism for their religion, basically.
yeah,
And their militarism and violence because they're motivated by jihad and world conquest. So absolutely, there's a complete suppression of all of free speech and everything that is anti or possibly critical of Islam. So that's also completely fills the bill of fascism. It also has a synergy with corporations, in that in Islam, all businesses should be working in technically for the state benefit or um, for the spreading of Islam, basically, and they hate every other ideology that exists. So that includes liberalism, by its very definition. It's the complete rejection of everything liberal. So in that sense, every Muslim is basically a fascist. Then,
you'd say every Muslim, not just extremist Muslims.
well, I mean,
I mean, we have secular Muslims in the United States. I don't know if you have them there.
yeah, well, the average Muslim is basically like Bible belters.
Sure, but the average Muslim also lives in the Middle East.
Yeah, but even the average Muslim that it lives in Europe, I don't know how it's in America, but the average Muslim in Europe, it would still be considered heavily conservative.
Sure, so this is
We,
something
we,
that's different between Europe and the United
and
States.
then that's true, yeah, yeah. Like we in Europe, we imported millions of ports basically, and America was really heavily strict on its filtration of people who actually benefit America, right? America only allows in people that they know are going to be a net benefit for the society, and they very heavily vet people as well on their ideological and on their sentiment of the society itself. While Europe basically just imported millions of people without asking any serious questions about it.
Yeah, we also integrate people a bit better. In the United States, Muslims tend to actually be more left wing, but it seems like it's the opposite literally everywhere else on the planet.
Well, I would say that in Europe they're also pretty left wing, but it's only because we don't have a right wing. And the left wing in Europe is basically we don't even we're not going to look at all the bad things they're going to do. We're just not even going to discuss it. It's not even open for discussion. It's completely a politically correct situation in Europe right now, where it's basically impossible to address the situation.
Hmm. Oh, well,
Talking about we had the UBI issue, right?
yeah,
And in Europe, social welfare is pretty common here as well. And the problem we have is that in America, the people that go to America, they build up their own life, right? So they start from scratch and they build everything up. But in Europe, we basically give everything right away to everybody, right? So social welfare is good enough that you can get by and you don't need anything else. Some of the social welfare programs in the Netherlands, for example, are so good that they basically they give you the same living standard as in the country where you came from, but then in the top 10%, right? So the poorest person in Morocco, for example, if they came to the Netherlands, they would be the same living standard as one of the richest people in Morocco, right?
yeah.
But that means that they also become completely reliant on the welfare system.
But it
So the
also means you guys don't
integration,
have many people who fall
yeah,
through the cracks.
yeah. In the Netherlands, actually it's so bad that Moroccan people are basically condemned to forever being in the bottom of the social hierarchy. They have a lot of similarities actually with black people in America because they're like an underclass who barely develop. They live in their own ghettos and they got their own ghetto lifestyle basically. And they live off government welfare while also hating government at the same time for not helping them enough, but also not having the cultural incentives to actually get them out of the situation that they're in. Because they blame society for all the problems they have, so they also don't feel like there's any incentive to actually do something for society to get out of the situation that they're in.
Uh,
It's a little bit like I can't actually speak for it, of course, because I'm not American, but I imagine it would be similar to some of the black people ghetto lifestyle that they have.
maybe I'm not. Um,
I'm not saying it's for
we
all
have
black people, of course.
we have a stereotype about that here, but I don't know like how true it is.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I think, but I don't know.
I live in like in a really rural area, so I couldn't like speak towards like what my neighbors are like or anything like that because they're all like white. They're also all really
What
poor.
what state are you from?
What? I'm from
What,
upstate
what
New
state
York.
are you from? Oh, okay, okay.
The part of New York that never shows up in movies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you mean. The bigger part, right?
The part with the mountains.
Yeah. All right. It's always kind of weird. Like if people talk about New York, they think about New York the city, but the rest, like you got like Manhattan Island and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then you got like the whole fucking thousands of kilometers to the northeast of that nobody ever talks about.
Yep. And
But
nobody
that's
even
where
talks about the capital of New York, which is Albany, and that's a pretty big city too.
I learned something new today. I learned the capital of New York now. I didn't. I thought it was New York, but apparently it's Albany.
Nope. Uh, don't feel bad. I'm pretty sure there's people who live in New York State who probably think the capital is New York City, but no, it's Albany,
What
which
do you
is
think is the capital of the Netherlands?
the capital of the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Shit, I used to know this. I don't know. Does it begin with an H?
Technically, yes. Now we have it's a trick question. We have two capitals. We have the Amsterdam, right? Amsterdam is pretty popular with most people. It's the
Yeah.
only city they pretty much know. But the actual capital of the Netherlands is The Hague.
Oh yeah.
That's where the actual political power is. Amsterdam is officially the capital because it's the most important, the most industrious city. It's the most important international city, but it's not where the government actually is. The government's in The Hague.
You want to know what's
But
funny?
officially, yeah.
There's a city near where I live in New York State called Amsterdam.
Oh, okay. Well, technically, New York is New Amsterdam, man. I mean, I'm still plotting my takeover of it. We're coming back, bro. We're gonna make everybody make the Netherlands great again, bro.
Yeah, we have a bunch of cities in the United States which are named after cities in Europe.
Yeah, they're ripe for takeover.
Oh yeah.
The Dutchies are coming back, bro.
All right. Well, I don't think we're gonna see any agreement on the main topic we've been talking about. So
Yeah, like I still don't like based on the single point of saying that it's an overreach of power and about it takes some people's rights away. I would agree on that, right? Like it potentially there's a big risk of that, but that inherently doesn't make it fascist. It has flavors of fascism, but it doesn't make it necessarily fascist. So it's incorrect to label it without being sure of what the intentions behind it are. You understand my point there?
yeah.
Like I don't think you can legitimately say with certainty that it is fascist. It's absolutely an overreach of power. It's an authoritarian move. But the fascism itself doesn't like not every move like that is necessarily fascist. It's not from a fascist ideology.
Yeah.
Because I could argue that it's a communist thing too, then, because the communists also do those things,
Well, I'm
but it doesn't
arguing.
make it communist.
Well, I'm arguing the action by itself in a vacuum would be fascist.
No, exactly. But in a vacuum, it would absolutely not be fascist. Because what would make it fascist then, other than the fact that it's an authoritarian power move?
The suppression of individual liberties. I think you can be
Is
authoritarian without suppressing.
is Trump doing this in the goal of making himself a dictatorial power? Is he trying to prop his nationalism up through this act? Is he trying to suppress dissent?
I don't know yet. All he said was he wants to send homegrowns to El Salvador.
Yeah, but he doesn't say under what circumstances either with that,
Well, he told
right?
them to build more
And that
prisons like CCOT.
doesn't yeah, like Sika, but it doesn't he doesn't say that he wants to strip away their rights. There's nothing that suggests that by itself, by the statement itself, in a vacuum, it does not say that Trump would support taking away their citizen rights. I think that's an assumption on your case, right? You're
Well,
assuming that if you were to send them to El Salvador, that their citizen rights would be taken away because that's what happened to the citizens of SICAT in El Salvador. But that's not um, what he is saying in a vacuum.
even if they're still citizens, uh, as I argued, like they still lose like their various um, um, their various protections. Like they lose the right to humane treatment. They lose. I don't even know if they like how the right of attorney would even work. Like
You don't have right to humane treatment. You have the right to not suffer unusual punishment. But what unusual punishment is debatable. But there's nothing about humane there. That's not part of the Constitution. That wasn't the word humane is a recent invention of the last 70, 80 years.
what is it? The Eighth Amendment. Let me check. Eighth. I think it's the Eighth Amendment.
Yeah, it's the Eighth Amendment.
Yes, so prohibits excessive bail, excessive fines, and cruel and unusual punishment,
Yeah.
aiming to limit the government's power to punish individuals.
Of what is unusual punishment? Like, for example, the bail question. You're not gonna send a person that's um, convicted of not convicted, suspected of a murder case, for example. You're not gonna give him a bail at all. Like the bail is something that the judge can decide to give or not. Right? Is his right to bail now denied? Because no, right? The crime determines what kind of punishment you're gonna get. But the question is, if he's going to send people to El Salvador, he's not going to send the petty thief that stole like a $50 at a Walmart or something, right? He's going to send the most extreme cases there. Then the question becomes, is it unusual punishment in that case?
Well,
Debatable.
I don't think we usually like take the idea of like like the type of prison that we send people is like part of their punishment. Like I don't think like we say, okay, this guy's really really bad, so we're gonna send this guy to a prison with no air conditioning at all in like a really hot area.
But they do that. Judges absolutely do that.
They do.
Judges have to decide to which prison they go. If you're lucky, they send you to a nice prison. If you're unlucky, they send you to a horrible prison.
No, I'd have to look into that.
Some prisons have rehabilitation. Other prisons don't have any rehabilitation. Right? So it's luck of the draw where you're going to end up at.
No, I thought it was usually like whatever prison's convenient. I know there's like different. There's like white collar prisons.
There's different prisons for all kinds of things. There's like the maximum security prisons and stuff. They're completely different from other prisons.
Yeah, but the reason for maximum security prisons is because like these are people who we put them there because we really don't want to risk them escaping, not because.
Yeah, but you also have less rights by consequence of that.
Yeah, it's true, but
you get less airtime. You get less freedoms to do things. Basically, you don't have any rehabilitation programs. There's some standard, but that standard is basically just what the state decided to give at that moment. Or if you're unlucky, whatever the for-profit prison decided to give you. Because I don't give a fuck, right? The for-profit prisons don't care about you at all.
Yeah, that's true. You don't have for-profit prisons where you live, do you?
No, we don't.
Yeah, I think it's mostly an American thing.
But I had a friend who had to go into prison. Not because he did anything bad, but because he didn't have enough room at the children, what's it called, protective services. They're not very good in the Netherlands. It's really awful. They actually sent children to prisons because they didn't have enough room to put them.
That's pretty messed up.
Yeah, well, it's like the prison was half, not that specific section of the prison. It's not like they came in contact with prisoners or anything, but they just used the facilities basically. It's still fucking inhumane, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, well, that's also part of how shit goes, right? Is that inhumane? It's probably, but there are no perfect solutions sometimes.
Yeah, I can understand like I could understand it if like we had like no room in prisons whatsoever, and it was looking I'm gonna put people into another country. I'd still just argue we should build more prisons in that case, but
Sure, but let's say like, normally you pay 40,000 per year for one prisoner, right?
yeah.
40,000. Or maybe you can send them to El Salvador for 5,000.
Yeah, but
You're saving the taxpayer $45,000.
yeah, but the savings, like what's being cut, I think says something about the intentions of person. Like if the guy's like, okay, we'll cut money by cutting a person's by like living standards in the prison, and then we'll like fuck that guy.
But if they're violent offenders, murderers, and everything else, who's really gonna give a fuck? Most people are not gonna care. Most people are like, oh, fuck that guy, right? To some degree, I'm also that guy. I'm like, oh, fuck that guy. If you really did something that terrible, then yeah, sorry. Why should the society pay so much money to keep you supported when we could do it way cheaper?
Hmm. Oh well.
Or do you think the victims should pay for the incarceration? Should the victims supply all the money and food so that the person who's incarcerated can continue living on their dime?
I think that's one of the things when you live in a liberal democracy, where like you pay some of the money that you pay has to go towards keeping certain living standards, and they can be for bad people or they can be for good people.
Like strictly speaking, I'm actually against prisons almost entirely. Like I'd almost completely abolish prisons entirely, and I would make everybody that did a crime pay back to the victims. Right? You lose the same citizen rights you have in prison basically, but you're not held prisoner in the sense that you're in a box with a police officer controlling you the whole time, right? Because that's enormously economically inefficient. But the person who did a crime, they should be punished, and the punishment should be that they pay back whatever they can to the victims. You know what
What
I'm saying?
what if there's no survivors or next of kin? Like you wipe out
Well,
an
then the
entire
state
family.
then the state gets.
So it'd be
Yeah, if you do a
community
genocide, you're
service.
gonna make sure you do it with everybody, right?
So
And then
basically,
there's
you'd
no more.
replace prison with community service.
Yeah, basically, if it's possible that they could, like, if you do crime, like, right, let's say you steal money from a store or something, right? Normally, you would be sent to prison for X amount of months, right? I
Yeah.
think that is incredibly fucking stupid. That is so fucking dumb. Because you're just sending them to a place where they're going to cost a shit metric ton of like, it is literally cheaper just to give them the money so they can live then basically. It's cheaper to like give them the same as I do, like I live on social welfare, right? But it's cheaper to literally give them the money so they don't need to steal at that point. So
Um.
that's not a logical system.
Yeah. Sure.
If it costs $50,000 to keep a person in prison, right? I only cost $15,000 right now, and just to give me food, shelter, and everything else. If they said like, oh, you can have $50,000 if you don't go to prison and just continue living like doing, you don't do any stealing anymore. Like, yeah, sure, why not? No, it's cheaper. I don't need to work. I can just live off. You don't. If they gave the guy $40,000 to use to steal, just so he doesn't need to steal anymore, you're still cheaper off than the price of $50,000 per year to keep him incarcerated, right? So that system is not only fucking economically stupid, it doesn't make any fucking sense. That guy that did the crime, you should be sent to some kind of work camp or something, right? Preferably with rehabilitation, I mean, right? So he gets sent to a government job or even to a corporation, and he's basically held, he's physically still tied to that corporation at that point. Like he's indentured servitude, basically. He is an indentured servitude that's going to pay off his debt, and he has to be rehabilitated while in society. But not don't throw the motherfucker in a fucking prison prison system that costs them tens and tens and thousands of dollars for the victims. It's such a stupid system. Like I
Yeah,
understand for like extreme violent people that did something really fucked up, but if you just stole some shit or something, right? You shouldn't be going to prison at all. Like the whole prison system, putting people into a fucking box with a police officer going by the whole time, check if you're still in your fucking prison. That shit doesn't make any fucking sense. That shit is invented in the Middle Ages for people that the king didn't like if you were like a critic of the king or something, they would throw you into the oubliette, which would be the like the dungeon basically, and they would let you waste away there. You would basically just die in a fucking hole in the ground. That was just basically intended to kill off political opponents. And somehow this was co-opted to become our actual prison system. But in the past, we didn't throw people in prison like this. We just punished them through society and forced them to pay off their debt and force them to like we would punish them in society itself by either lashing them, which was quick and easy, right? Just give them a fucking couple of slaps, and then you put them on some kind of payoff system. That's way cheaper, way more simplistic than putting them in prison for the next 6 months where they're going to waste away, doing nothing, just costing money.
with
In my opinion, yeah,
with the prisons were based on rehabilitation rather than punishment.
yeah, but most prisons aren't based on rehabilitation, and even the rehabilitation system itself is extremely ineffective because you don't need to participate.
Hmm.
If the system is entirely based on rehabilitation, would be better. But it would still be even cheaper to just make them indentured servitude for the time that they have to serve their crime, basically, or their punishment. I mean, and then rehabilitate them while they're in society. And every time if they make another transgression while they are in society, fulfilling their indentured servitude time, then they get just a lot more. Like every time you do something bad while you're in indentured servitude, you get an increasingly higher punishment. Until if you do something really fucked up shit, then you get sent to the actual prison system where you're going to be sent into a dark hole, basically. But normally speaking, if you did a couple thefts or burglaries or whatever, you shouldn't go to prison. It doesn't make any sense. You're just costing more money. These people should be worked to the bone to make them pay back what they owe to society and to the victims. Like their
Uh,
life should be harsh, but it shouldn't be in a prison system itself.
I kind of agree with
It's
the idea of
basically
like community
it's
service. Now,
basically communist gulag system, but then for the for bad people.
yeah, I'm not big
When
on
I
the whole
think about it,
gulagging
right?
prisoners.
Yeah, that's gulagging, bro. I'm thinking about it. It's absolutely gulagging, but it does make sense to some degree.
Sure, but I think like even
I
like
put
bad people.
all my people, all the pawns that come to my Rimworld colony that tried to attack me, they're all going into the gulag system, man.
Yeah, but
I
I
throw
should
all
hope
my
that even prisoners get like a like even like bad people get have a higher quality of life than the average
I
Rimworld
try to
pawn.
save everyone that comes onto my colony map, man. Every every bad raider that comes onto my colony map, if they are from a permanently hostile faction, they will get enslaved, and I'll work them to the bone. And then when the royal tribute collector comes around, I'll sell them to the royal tribute collector, so I'll get the honor from them, so I can upgrade my Psycaster. But if they're from a like a not permanent hostile faction, I'll convert them for the social experience. Then I'll send them back to the original faction till we're allied, and then then they don't come back anywhere anyway.
I've got a slave in my current colony who's currently having a mental break. They do all my mining.
Yeah, exactly. See, he's working off his debt to society. He's being a productive element. And if you had to put him in a prison the whole time, what's the fucking point of that? Right? And you're just feeding him, having the warden come over the whole time, checking up if he's still nice and cozy in his prison cell. No, fuck that guy. He should be working.
I don't think we should do the Rimworld method because in the Rimworld method, I steal all their organs.
Okay, that goes a little too far in my opinion. You know, there I have boundaries, even though I kind of steal their organs too. Especially if they killed, if they like hurt one of, if they're one of the permanent enemy factions and they hurt one of my pawns, they're definitely going to get some of the organs transferred. If one of my pawns is lacking in, but it's only for the worst people. I mean, all the raiders are the worst people.
Or if you capture Tigan.
What?
You know Tigan inserted himself into the game, right?
I mean, Tynan.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's something like a game dev or something. His backstory.
Yeah, and his stats are always very low.
Yeah, that's pretty funny though.
Yeah, every time I encounter him, I steal all his organs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think I just send him away again. Like, I get out of here, bro. Make a better game.
Alright, well, it started raining now, and,
Yeah, it's also around 10. So,
yeah, I'll talk to you later. This is a good chat.
all right, man.